Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to a special online event today called Surrender to Divine Flow. Release your limiting stories for an ecstatic love of life with the Venerable Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati. I am Josh Wise, and I'm the VP of Education at the Shift Network. I'm really excited to be hosting today's program, bringing you Sadhvi, an American-born wisdom teacher, mystic, psychologist, and author bridging East and West. Thank you so much for being here, Sadhvi ji. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Josh. And it's so beautiful to be with you and with the whole Shift Network community.
Now, we only have an hour, and so I'd like to dive right in. And at the end of our time together, we'll share how you can make a bigger commitment to your own transformation with Sadhvi ji through a truly groundbreaking course, Divine Flow. Embody your truest self by releasing your limiting stories and igniting an ecstatic love of life. I first experienced Sadhvi ji's teachings when I stumbled upon some of her videos online, and I was so touched, Sadhvi, by your compassion, the clarity with which you speak, your capacity to understand the stories that people are carrying and how that impacts in this human experience. And I'm so excited to get to talk more with you today. And before we get to the core of your teaching, I'd love for you to share what is it that put you on the path to devote your life to this work?
You know, Josh, it's really a story of grace and of surrender. I landed up in India almost 30 years ago now. I was 25 and I had no idea why I was there. I had graduated undergrad from Stanford University. I was in the midst of doing a PhD in pediatric neuropsych. I was I was an academic. I was a scientist. I was not spiritually seeking or searching on any kind of conscious level. But I agreed to go to India because I was a very strict vegetarian and I knew that I would be able to get good vegetarian food. So I end up in India, not knowing why I was there. But on the airplane, I took a vow, and that vow ended up transforming my life. And the vow was very simple, just to keep my heart open. And I vowed if I can't keep my heart open, I'm going to leave India and come back to California. In order to stay, I have to keep my heart open. So, fast forwarding, Rishikesh becomes the very first place we go. And as soon as we get to Rishikesh and put our bags down in the hotel, I said, I'm going to go put my feet in the water. I was hot. I was tired. I didn't even know that the river was sacred, the mother goddess Ganga, the Ganges River. I didn't know it was sacred. I just knew river. And I go down to put my feet in and have this spontaneous experience of being in the presence of the divine. Everything I saw was pervaded by that divine presence. It began, of course, as I looked out over the sacred river. But then as I turned my head, it didn't matter what I was looking at, a child, a telephone pole, a marble step. It was all the divine. And then I looked within and I realized, oh my God, I am also divine. I am not separate from that divine. Now, as I said, I was not a consciously spiritual person. I was not a religious person. I was not someone who thought about God, who thought about spirit or soul or anything like that. And for the first 25 years of my life, I had really identified myself based on my story. The obvious, externally obvious story of, young, very well to do girl from Los Angeles, quite literally from Hollywood, hence the Hollywood to the Himalayas title of my memoir. A girl who seemingly has it all: the money, the privilege, the opportunity, the education. I identified as that. I identified as the good student that I was. But I also identified based on my struggles and my challenges and my suffering and the trauma I had been through. I had experienced severe sexual abuse, abandonment, bulimia, depression. I mean, a whole spectrum of things that were really easy to identify as. I am the victim of this. I am the victim of that. I suffer from this. And by the time I got to India at the age of 25, I was over what felt like a hump. I had gotten to a point where I was managing my life, managing my emotional life, managing my school, my PhD program, managing my relationships, managing my meals, managing all of that. And I really thought, Josh, that that was the highest goal, was just to manage your life. No one had ever so much as suggested to me that we can actually be free. I thought the goal was to go from not able to manage your life to managing your life. And then suddenly, in that moment, standing on the banks of this sacred river of love and liberation, I had this experience of, oh my God, I am not wrong or bad or tainted or impure or not good enough or any of these ways that I identified. But I am one with that divine that pervades and permeates everything. And it was the most incredible, transformative experience of my life. About a week later, fast forwarding here, but about a week later, I was walking through Parmarth Nikethan Ashram. Actually, I take it back. It wasn't a full week. It was maybe just a couple of days. I was walking through Parmarth Nikethan, the ashram where I now live, and I heard a voice. And the voice said, "You must stay here." And I looked around and there was no one. So I ignored it. And I kept walking, and then I heard it again. And I was just about to ignore it for the second time when I remembered my vow. And so I went in and said, I want to stay. And again, that's a beautiful story in and of itself. But I want to just touch on one last point here, which was several days later when I was sitting with the head of the ashram, one of India's most revered spiritual masters, named His Holiness Puja Swami Chidanand Saraswati. And of course, I didn't know anything about him, just that he was the head of the ashram. And I'm sitting with him and I tell him my story. Here's where I've been harmed, abused, abandoned, wronged. Here's where I've suffered. Here's the trauma. And he looks at me and he says, "Are you going to take this to the grave?" I said, "No." He said, "So are you going to let this go on your deathbed? Maybe you'll let it go a month before you die, maybe a week before you die." And I was like, "No, no, Swamiji, I'm in process. I'm in process. I'm learning. I'm working on it." And he looked at me and he said, you're waiting for someone to draw the line. You're waiting for someone to come in and tell you, you can be free. He said, no one will. You can carry this pain, carry this anger, carry this story, carry this trauma to your grave, or you can let it go tonight. And I was like, tonight? And he said, yes, we have this sacred ceremony on the banks of the river. And after the ceremony, I want you to stand in the waters of Mother Ganga, and I want you to offer it to her. And of course, the Western trained psychologist in me thought, there is no way. Rivers don't sweep away trauma and pain. But again, I remembered the vow, and I made a commitment that even though I was sure there was no way it was going to work, that I would be sincere about it. And that for me is what I think of as a trust fall into the universe, which we'll talk more about, I'm sure, later on. But that moment of saying, I don't think this is going to work. This sounds crazy, but I'm going to trust it. I'm going to do it sincerely. I'm going to do it with an open heart. And I stood in the river and I I prayed and I cried and I prayed and I cried. And I offered the pain and the anger and the story. And she took it. And that was, 29 years ago. And it's been such an extraordinary experience of freedom, but also of being able to share these teachings with people. Because what I've realized is your journey doesn't have to look like my journey in order to be able to implement these lessons in your life wherever you are. So it's been such a blessing to be able to be here. I've now been in India for the last almost 30 years in this sacred land and sharing the teachings, sharing what the East says about suffering and pain and freedom, and bridging that with what the Western trained psychologist in me knows about the human psyche. And it's just been extraordinary. And I'm so excited to share this and all of the lessons with your community.
Thank you so much. What an incredible experience. What an amazing life journey you've had. And I know that we've only just scratched the surface. And it's, when you were talking about that moment where you could just recognize the divine in all
Hmm.
things and in all people and even within yourself, I I felt like I could feel even just the smallest taste of what that might have felt like. There's something so rich in the way you described that I was almost transported there with you. And
Oh,
I love these teachings of letting go and when are you going to let go. I think so many of us can relate to that of, yeah, I've got these stories, I've got these wounds and I'm working on them. And sometimes they show up in my life or I act out in sort of unskillful ways and I'm processing this, I'm working on it. And what if what you're saying is actually true, that you
it is, I
can
promise.
I I I feel that. When you say that, I feel that. And I'm excited to learn more about this. Um, and what, part of you in stepping into this was making that vow to keep your heart open. Can you share more about what that looks like for you as someone is entering this path?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, I do want to admit that when I took that vow on the airplane, I had no idea that it was going to be that vow that changed my life. And I think that that's a really important piece to mention is we all have deep reasons that we are here on planet Earth. We have reasons that our soul has incarnated in this lifetime, if you believe in multiple lifetimes, which I do. But even if you don't, there's a reason that the soul has incarnated in this life with this particular body, this particular set of circumstances, that there's a reason, there is a purpose, a karmic package that our soul is here to walk, to fulfill. And that vow is the vow to remain open. We may not know what it is, but it's to stay open to it. And it's difficult because we all have pain, we all have struggles, we all have obstacles, we all have suffering. Many of us probably have some degree of trauma in our life. And it's so easy to use that as an excuse for why we're not stepping up to the plate of our life. The preface to the instructions that Swamiji gave me about giving it to the river, the preface was me asking him a question about fear, because I was always very stressed, very tense. And I asked him about how to free myself from fear. And he said, "You fear because you don't trust." And that was what led me into giving him my whole story. And what I realized in retrospect is that that story was my excuse. It was my crutch. Like, here is why I can't step up to the plate of my life. Here is why I don't trust. Because, see, I've been harmed, I've been abused, I've been abandoned. And it's certainly from, an objective standpoint, a good story, a good excuse. Up until that moment, no one had ever done anything other than say, basically, "Oh, ho, ho, you poor thing." And he was the first person to really make me recognize that my life was not about having a good excuse, that it was about freedom. And that at the end of our lives, nobody says, "Well, thank God I had a good excuse." At the end of our life, we want to feel like we've really lived it to the fullest. The point is not to have a good excuse for why we didn't live it. And so for me, that soul's vow is a vow that says, yeah, there will be challenges, there will be obstacles, there will be plenty of good reasons to stay small, to stay stuck, to stay trapped. But that's not why you're here. You're here for freedom. But the freedom has to begin with a vow. Here in India, in the Vedic tradition, any ceremony that we do always begins with what is called sankalp. And you always take a sankalp in which you vow that I am going to do this ceremony, this offering, with the fullest of my sincerity. I'm going to offer myself to this offering. And that taking of a vow is a critical first step.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. The power of that vow as a critical first step to offer yourself fully. I mean, what a that really resonates with me. And the
Oh,
words that I have echoing in my heart right now are, you fear because you don't trust. You fear because you don't trust. And I think that so many of us experience fear on a day-to-day basis, fear, anxiety, and all the different ways that it shows up in our lives and in our thought processes and the stories that we tell ourselves. And you mentioned earlier your trust fall. I was wondering if you might share a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So, when we're in school or a lot of times in corporate team building exercises, we do something called a trust fall where person A stands and they spread their arms out and they literally fall back into the arms of person B who's standing behind them. And it's fun as kids. It's a good team building exercise in companies. But what's so interesting about it is even if the person standing behind you is a total stranger, or even worse, an enemy, a competitor, the schoolyard bully, we always drop. In all the times I ever did it as a kid or in so many different other programs, I've never seen anyone refuse to drop back. And I've never seen anyone let their partner fall. Even the schoolyard bully, even at 10 years old, somehow inherently understands to catch the person who's falling. And we have that faith in a stranger, in an enemy, in the bully. Why would we not have it in the universe? And that's really what the teaching that I've learned is this universe is here to support us. One of my favorite stories, parables, is of a man who's holding on to a rope for dear life, hanging from a rope. And he hears this angelic voice that says, "Let go." He says, "I can't let go. I'll plummet to my death." But her voice is so sweet that finger by finger, she coaxes him to let go until he's holding on only by one, just his little pinky finger. "Let go," she says. And against all of what seems like his better judgment, he does, fully prepared to plummet to his death. And then he looks down. He doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't fall. And he looks down and he realizes he's been standing on solid ground the entire time. And I love the story because it feels like that's what so many of us do in our lives. We have this death grip on life. And I know I did. This death grip of micromanagement, control on our lives. And sadly, we try to have it on the people around us, the circumstances around us. And we hold on so tenaciously as though somehow if I let go, I'm going to fall, the sky's going to fall, I'm going to implode, explode. But that's why the parable is so beautiful, because we're on solid ground. We're being held, we're being nourished, we're being nurtured. And so the trust fall is a call to trust the same universe that teaches seeds how to sprout and become trees and then give fruit, and that there's an intelligence, a cosmic intelligence in this universe through which an apple seed only will become an apple tree. It knows what to do, through which a caterpillar gets a sign, a signal, climbs the tree, weaves a cocoon, knows how to come out as a butterfly, knows how to fly. You never see a butterfly scooting its way back down, back down a tree trunk because it was too scared to fly. In nature, we know to trust. But as humans, I think that our ego mind and our fear have gotten so much that we've stopped trusting. So the trust fall is really a call back to trusting this divine intelligence, this divine creation.
And is that trust, is that, and that trust fall essentially into the divine creation, the universe, uh, is that the freedom that you're talking about? You've mentioned freedom a few times. And I'd be really curious to hear more about what exactly that means for you.
So, Josh, this is such a beautiful question. The freedom that I talk about and that I've experienced is a freedom to embody the truth of who we are rather than being stuck based on stories and narratives. If you look at how most of our lives are led, and from our internal experience to the life choices that we make, it's based on us being stuck, sadly. We are stuck with projections from our early childhood, both from things that people have told us and taught us directly, indirectly, based on experiences that we've had, the lessons that we had in our family of origin, in our education systems, in our culture. We're stuck. We're stuck by cultural definitions of success as we grow, by ideas that we are our achievements, we are our grades, we are our income. And we have all of these different links in a chain that keep us living according to someone else's agenda, someone else's narrative, and based on how we've identified from what's happened to us. So, in my case, someone who was abused, someone who was abandoned, someone who struggled with an eating disorder. This was an identity. And it was an identity that kept me stuck. Like, okay, well, then, so this is what I think about. And this is how I move through the world. And this is why I don't trust. Freedom is being able to be present, alive, available in every moment to what that moment offers us and wants from us. And if what that moment wants is love, compassion, trust, faith, connection, service, we're able to do it without an excuse for why we don't trust, why we can't have compassion, why we don't connect. And if what the moment wants from us is to step up into an action, a role in the world, a reflection of who we are, a sharing of our gifts, of our skills, of our abilities, that we're able to step up into it without self sabotage, without fear of failure, without worrying about, oh my God, what are the neighbors going to think? What are people going to say? What if I fail? Who's going to laugh? What's going to happen to me? That's freedom. Freedom is not a license for recklessness or decadence. It's the ability to literally accept the invitation of every single moment that the universe offers us.
And how do we accept that invitation each moment? This, I've heard you refer to spiritual surrender. Um, could you say more about that?
Absolutely. Surrender is one of my favorite topics. It's one of my most important personal practices. First of all, surrender is not passive, surrender is active. A lot of us think of surrender as kind of a four-letter word. It's something that we do only when we're failing, only when we're losing. We throw in the towel, like, you win, I lose, I surrender. But spiritual surrender is not that at all. Spiritual surrender is a very conscious, very clear, very courageous choice that says, hey, I actually have no control anyway. I don't have any control over how other people act, think, choose. I have no control. I can love, I can give, but I have no control over how that person's going to respond to me. I can hope, I can want, but I have no control over whether the universe is going to give me what I want. I can love summertime and wear a bikini all the way into December. But that does not mean that the universe is going to say, "Oh, you don't like the cold weather? Okay, no problem. We won't snow this year. We'll stay in the, mid 80s through the winter because hey, you like to wear your bikini." Surrender says, "I have no control. Therefore, let me align myself with the flow of the universe. Let me align myself with that cosmic intelligence." Surrender is the caterpillar climbing the tree. It hears the voice. On some level, I'm trying to channel caterpillarness, but I feel like on some level there must be some part of the caterpillar that's like, really? Climb a tree? Really weave this thing, this cocoon? It's never seen anyone do it. It's never been taught. No one said, hey, by the way, there's going to come a time and you will climb a tree, you will weave a cocoon, you will become a butterfly. But there's a surrender. There's a sign, there's a signal. And so it does it. That's the surrender. It's, in a way, it's also a kind of sacred rebellion from what the voices in our head tell us about staying small, being scared, being stuck with our ego narratives, living our lives as just responses to stimuli. Surrender says, okay, universe. I trust. I'm going to trust fall. And I'm going to realize that my highest intention is not about making things happen according to my will, but aligning my life, aligning my energies with the energies of the universe. And that surrender is what I have seen makes everything possible. It was surrender that led me to stand in the river and offer. It was surrender that led me to say, oh, okay, I got, this voice that says you must stay here. Let me walk inside and tell them I want a room. It's surrender every moment along the way of, oh, okay, this is the flow of the universe. I don't have to be a slave to my story, to my chains, to what my mother or father or aunt or uncle or fifth grade teacher or some, actor or actress I saw on a TV commercial or an influencer on social media. I don't have to be a slave to what they've said. I have a direct connection with the intelligence of the universe, and I'm going to surrender to it.
I love that view of surrender being active as opposed to passive. And you've talked about stories that we tell ourselves and and our thoughts. And I'm curious how how we can navigate our thoughts. Sometimes thoughts can carry us into some difficult places within our own minds. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Before we can work with our actions, we have to be able to work with our thoughts, because our thoughts are what end up determining our actions. So all of our practices are actually to purify the mind, to bring the mind into alignment. I think of thoughts as vehicles. They take us places. Some thoughts we have make us feel super happy, expansive, ecstatic, compassionate, connected. And some thoughts we have make us feel angry, aggressive, separate, divided, like we don't have enough. We're, lack. Thoughts determine our emotional state, our psychological state, and of course, they determine our actions that then end up quite literally writing our destiny. In the law of karma, that's a core foundational pillar of the Vedic tradition, is the law of karma. And karma means action. So our thoughts are not only determining our actions, but then our actions are literally determining our destiny. So thoughts are incredibly powerful. The problem is that most of us are just so willing to kind of let the mind go wherever the mind wants to go, and however it wants to be triggered by something someone else said or did, or some post we see on social media, or some text message we get, or some fluctuation in the universe that's happening. And it's important to realize that that vehicle is going to take us someplace. And do we want to get on it? We have a choice. Just because a thought arises in the mind doesn't mean that we have to jump on it. And the example that I always think about is, if you're standing at a bus station and a bus goes by, you don't get on it just because it's slowed down. First, you check and you look at, like, well, what's written on it? The destination, where's it going? And if it's not going where you want to go, you don't get on. Just because the driver slowed down, you don't get on. You're going to, namaste, thank you, but keep going. Many of us have found ourselves sitting at gates at airports while the flight before ours is still at the gate. And the gate agent could yell, last call, but we're not going aboard because we know that plane is not going to my destination. I'm going to wait for my plane to come. And in the same way, when these thought vehicles arise in our mind, we have to realize, oh, do I want to get on that? Is it going where I want to go? And if it's going to misery, then no, I don't get on it. I'm going to create a different thought. I'm going to have a different thought, take a different vehicle to actually where I want to end up.
That's such a powerful view of thoughts. To have the discipline to allow that bus to slow down in front of you and open the door, and to consciously choose to let that thought move on by. What a beautiful way of looking at thoughts, and our power to choose where we want to go. And I believe that you have a meditation for us, a practice to help
Sure.
us reconnect with divine intelligence.
Yeah, I'll take you through a short meditation. We'll do it in a longer and more in-depth version in the course and really work on how to integrate the teachings into our lives. But yeah, let's have a little taste of it. It's a practice called Niti Niti, which means not this, not this. And if you close your eyes and you allow yourself to just allow the awareness to anchor itself in your breath. Really try to consciously unhook the awareness from all of the things around you into the breath. Allow the mind to become still. Allow yourself to be right here, right now, in this very breath. And I'm going to make some statements. I'm going to pause temporarily so that you can get a full yes from within yourself. Because these statements are things that you need to feel and know in you. And you'll realize they're easy, they're simple. You're going to have automatic yeses to them. But it's still really important to let that yes resonate and reverberate through not just your intellectual mind, but through the full energetic being of you. So the first statement is, you are not the clothes you're wearing. Feel the yes. You know it, of course, because you change clothes all the time, but you doesn't change. But really let you not the clothes I'm wearing. You are not the skin beneath your clothes. And again, we know that obviously our skin keeps sloughing off and regenerating. We get sunburned and peel, but who we are doesn't change. I am not my skin. You are not the blood that flows through your body. And again, we know that. We donate blood, sometimes receive blood transfusions, and the blood cells die off and regenerate. But who we are doesn't change. I am not my blood. You are not your organs, not your kidneys, your liver, your spleen. You're not your bones. We are not this content within our physical body, not these different items inside the body. Allow there to just be this full, resounding yes. You know that. You break a bone, but who you are doesn't change. Maybe you donate a kidney or receive a kidney, but who you are doesn't change. And anyway, all of the cells of the organs keep regenerating every several years. But who we are doesn't change. Feel the yes. You are not serotonin or dopamine or norepinephrine or oxytocin, acetylcholine. You are none of the chemicals that flow through your brain. You are not a neurotransmitter. These chemicals are produced, held in little vesicles in our neurons, and then released into the synapse between neurons. but I am not the chemical. And you are not the electricity, not an electrical impulse that is flowing down an axon. You are not the chemistry. You are not the electricity in your brain. We know that, of course. We have different chemicals being secreted all the time. Different things change our brain chemistry. The food we eat, what we drink, the air we breathe. But who we are isn't changed. Since you are not the chemistry and the electricity, you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your memories, not your personality. All of these are just chemical and electrical patterns of behavior in different parts of the brain. But since you are not the chemistry, not the electricity, not the gray matter or the white matter, you are not those thoughts or emotions, not the personality. Allow that to percolate for a moment. Let it be a real felt yes. And just take a moment now that we've removed the layers of what we are not. Just take a moment and allow yourself in that open state of all of that you are not to just sit in a moment of possibility, a moment of presence, a moment of openness, willingness to see what is. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level in Namaste. And gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. And slowly lower the arms and open the eyes. So that's a practice. And again, we'll go into it in more depth during the course, but it's a practice called niti niti, that by reminding us what we are not allows us to remember what we are. And it's a practice that can be taken into every minute and every moment of our life. Someone says to you, you are worthless, you are stupid, you are this, you are that. just allow yourself to remember. Neti neti. I am not someone else's projections. I am not someone else's karmic package. I am not someone else's empty emotional toolbox. Who I am is spacious, is expansive, is divine, is soul, is spirit, is consciousness, is source. And so we develop a habit of remembering as we move through our day. And you'll find that not only are you saying neti neti to other people's projections, but you're saying it to your own. So many of us will walk down the street and, catch a glimpse of yourself in a store window or something. And the mind will go, oh my God, look at you. You look awful today. Your clothes are awful and you're too fat or too skinny or you're slouching or whatever it is. And just immediately, neti neti. I am not this body, not its size or its shape. I am also not the mind that is making these stories. And so you start to learn as you move through your day how to free ourselves every minute and every moment of the stories, of the narratives, of the triggers, of the projections, of the reactions, so that we're able to be alive and free and anchored and grounded and blossoming and vibrant and alive fully in every moment, because living based on stories of the past is dead, basically. We're living today based on something that no longer exists. And it's fascinating when you look up at the night sky and you see stars that literally only existed like that, tens of millions of years ago. And the night sky that we see is something that today, as we look at it, doesn't exist. And the light that we're seeing is only that which comes to us after millions of years. It's fascinating from an astronomy standpoint. But we don't want to live our lives like that. I don't want to live today based on a story from when I was 5 or 7 or 12 or 15. I want to be free today in this moment to respond to the moment in the fullness of my presence, of my yes. And
I
that's
love
what
it.
this practice gives us.
I love it. Thank you so much, Sadhvi. What a powerful practice. Such a beautiful practice. A very tangible and practical practice that can be brought into each moment. I absolutely love your teachings and how they help us cut through the clutter. There's so many influences in our lives these days, on social media, societal pressures, family pressures, old stories that we tell ourselves about who we are or who we should be or who we're, what we want, we think we want to be. And I love how your teachings help us cut through all of that to what truly is and who we truly are. And you've referred to your course a couple of times, and I want to take a few minutes to tell people about this course so that they can figure out, if it makes sense for them to dive deeper into these teachings with you. And I know that this course is truly groundbreaking, and it's an honor for us at the Shift Network to get to host you in offering this course, these teachings to our audience. So for those of you at home following along, you can learn more at divineflowcourse.com. Just type that URL directly into your browser, or you can simply click the link provided on the event page. It's divineflowcourse.com. And this course is for people who are ready to let go of fear and let go of the stories that are keeping you stuck, and opening up to this freedom that Sadhvi's been talking about. Um, Once again, that URL is divineflowcourse.com. And when you get to the page, just scroll down to the place where you see the headline that says, What You'll Discover in These 7 Weeks. We're going to talk through the modules, the 7 modules of the course. I'm going to read each module title, and I
Okay.
invite you to just briefly give a few highlights that let people know what they can expect during that week. So, Module 1, Seeing Your Story with Fresh Eyes, Discovering Where You're Stuck and How to Be Free.
Yeah, great. So, Josh, this first opening module is really helping us to see where we're stuck. What are the stories that I'm telling myself, about the universe, about my place in the universe that are keeping me stuck and that are dictating the way that I'm living in a way that's leading me not to freedom, but to a whole variety of different forms of misery. So, in that first opening module, you're going to learn to see the you that isn't your story. What stories are keeping you stuck? And who is the you that isn't those stories?
Beautiful. Module 2, Releasing Your Hand from the Coconut, The Art of Letting Go and Finding Freedom.
Yes. So this refers to one of my favorite stories, which is the story of how in a village in India, they rid the village of monkeys in a very non-violent way without harming the monkeys by taking coconuts, hollowing out the coconut, and sticking a sweet or a piece of fruit in the coconut. The monkeys would reach their hand into the coconut, grab hold of the treat, but, and this was the key, they had made the hole in the coconut big enough for an empty hand to go in, but too small for a closed fist to come out. And so the monkeys, holding on with this death grip on their treat, ended up with one of their four legs stuck in a coconut, couldn't run, couldn't climb trees, couldn't swing from branches. And so they were easily captured and taken back to the village. But the story is also, of course, a metaphor for how we live. We grab on to some kind of a story about ourselves, about our life. Sometimes we hold on to an attachment, an expectation, a fear, a desire. We hold on to it thinking that this thing is the key to my life. If I could just have this, then everything would be perfect, without realizing that that thing itself is what keeps us stuck. So, module 2 is really working on getting our hands out of the coconut, realizing that this thing that I'm holding on to is exactly the thing that's keeping me stuck. And even if it's a desire, it's an attachment, thinking that if I get it, everything's going to be great, but actually the death grip on it is what is stealing my life. So this module is around the act and the art of choosing consciously our freedom. And then how do we slowly open our fist, letting go of what we thought was the answer, to really open ourselves to the grace and the blessings of the universe.
What a beautiful metaphor. And could you briefly tell us about Module 3, Envisioning Yourself Beyond Your Current Story, Allowing a Larger Spirit to Flow In?
Yeah. A huge part of my personal experience and my teaching is around expansion. So it's not remove this part of you, it's not annihilate this or kill the ego. We don't talk about destroying aspects of ourselves or fighting them or annihilating them. We talk about an expansion of self that enables us to realize, okay, that pain is there. Okay, that desire is there. Okay, this experience is there, and it isn't who I am. What is the rest, the expansiveness of who I am? And there's some very personal stories from my life of how I first learned and developed these, which there isn't time to share now, but I'll share them in the module, and then walk people through practices of an expansion of the awareness of self.
Module 4, trust falling into the infinite, discovering the higher plan that awaits when you let go.
Yeah, so we talked about this. The module is actually really the art of trust falling. How do we develop faith? Because, of course, you can't trust fall if you don't have faith in the arms you're falling into. Again, even if it's a stranger, even if it's an enemy, we do it because we have, on some deep level, faith that they will catch us. But in the universe, whose arms are we falling into? So we'll talk about developing faith that is not predicated upon a religion, that is not founded upon having to believe in God per se, but having faith in cosmic intelligence, having faith in source, having faith in yourself, and learning to trust fall into that which we actually know will catch us.
Module 5, the sacred release, a ritual for loosening the death grip on life.
Yes, so this is in many ways actually the core. The rest is kind of building us up to it. And obviously with really powerful teachings that we keep in our lives and keep using over and over again every day. But the act of release is the act that sets us free and enables us then to embody a whole new way of being. And we will each develop a very specific release ritual. Mine, of course, was in the waters of the Ganga, but everyone's will be different. Will use Mother Nature, whether it's soil, whether it's water, whether it's fire, whether it's sky, as the divine into whose arms we are letting go and we are releasing, a way of letting energy go back into the universe from which it ultimately came, realizing it is not me, it is not mine, it is not myself, and giving it back to the elements, to the universe.
Module 6, staying free when others project their stories onto you, tools and techniques to keep you from taking old habits back on.
Yeah, this is a great module, and these are some of my favorite teachings and practices because it's so easy to take on other people's projections. It's so easy to feel like I am part of your karmic package, and we're not. And really being able first to recognize what is my truth versus what is a projection from someone else, what is someone else's karmic package, and how to distinguish that, and how to have courage to set boundaries with love, with compassion, with honoring, even with oneness and union. But boundaries, it's really, you could think about it like developing your spiritual and emotional immune system. There'll be a lot of specific practices that I share. The spiritual and emotional equivalents of things like taking vitamin C and staying hydrated and getting a good night's sleep and all the things that we do to keep our bodies strong. There's similarly protocols, spiritual protocols, emotional protocols for strengthening our immune system so that we can end up going anywhere, being with anyone, but not taking on their stuff, not getting metaphorically, spiritually sick or emotionally sick, by being in the presence of someone who is in a state of dis-ease.
Module 7, embodying your free self, daily rhythms of peace, purpose, and selfless service.
This is how to walk it. What is it going to look like every moment of every day? And really helping people put together morning practices, evening practices, daily remembrances, because we may know something, but then we get caught up in a situation at work or with family that derails us. How not to get derailed, how to stay anchored, but also what to do if you do temporarily get derailed, how to come back quickly, and how to move through the newness and the truth of yourself, and navigating relationships, because it's not always easy in the beginning when people still see us as the old self. And how do we introduce our friends and family members to our true self, our free self, without hurting people and with maintaining the integrity of the relationship and also our own truth.
Boy, I can feel how powerful this course is going to be for so many people. Just such an opportunity to let go of old stories and really step into that true self. I love that you are sharing practical tools and protocols for uh, for embodying a new way of being. Really stepping into that freedom. So, for those of you following along, once again, you can learn more at divineflowcourse.com. And I'll share a little bit more about the course. So, not only do you get these 7 90-minute live sessions with Sadhvi Ji that she just described, including interactive exercises and Q&A time, you will also get recordings of these sessions, both video and audio, full word for word transcripts to work with and study and highlight. You'll get weekly exercises and practices for deep inquiry and action learning, and a community group to support and deepen your experience. And when you go to the page, divineflowcourse.com, you'll also see a number of great extra bonuses as well. There is Step Up to Your Life, which is a workbook from Sadhvi and her team. Do you want to briefly tell us about that?
Yes, it's a beautiful way to work along with the course so that we can really, because one of the things is as we put things out into the world onto paper, there's a way of it solidifying and crystallizing. So it's a way to individually work through the course as you're doing it, taking the lessons, taking the teachings, and really working it for yourself. And then, of course, something that you can keep referring back to, going back to it, and even keep doing it again whenever you
Nice.
feel like you need to.
Oh, that's great. And another bonus is a post course live Zoom with Sadhvi. Can you tell us what people might experience there?
Yeah, the post course live Zoom is actually mostly going to be open for questions and answers. It's a month after the course ends, and I wanted to be able to be available for people so that any concerns, any questions, any stumbling blocks, any issues that are arising for people in the month after the course, that I can help them walk through. And also to give people some, I don't like the word advanced. in, in absence of a better word at the moment, to give people some additional advanced techniques that they can use now that they've already been implementing the ones from the course for a full month since we had ended. Some additional kind of next level step up practices that they can also implement.
Sounds like a great way for people to deepen their experience and and continue their expansion. I love it. Uh, Those are the bonuses that come with the program. And there's a special bonus when you signed up today by midnight. We like to do this to encourage you to go to the page divineflowcourse.com and really tune in right now while it's fresh, while you're connected with Sadhvi Ji and myself, and really have a sense that this is the moment to make a decision. So we want to give you a little extra incentive to make a decision today about if you want to move forward. And that special bonus is a postcard set from Sadhvi and her team called Stop and Not Mine. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Sadhvi?
So it's a way as we move through our day, if we find that we are being triggered into an inauthentic way of being, if we find that we are being triggered back into story, back into reaction, back into untruth, back into being stuck in some way, how immediately in the moment to stop that from happening and to come back to truth. So it's something to carry around with you, literally in your pocket, in your purse, in your wallet, whatever you always have. And just every time that you feel yourself in a moment of stuckness or untruth or triggered, to just pull it out and come straight back to self.
I love that. What a practical tool to really apply this in one's life. That's fantastic. This is going to be an amazing program, truly a transformative program. And once again, you can find all the details at divineflowcourse.com. We've kept it very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $128, or you can save 10% when you pay in full, one payment of $349. The course begins on January 8th. So I encourage you to go over to divineflowcourse.com now and give it a read. Tune in, and if you're getting a yes, then there's really no risk since there's a money back guarantee of your satisfaction. The course sessions are on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. But even if you can't make the live sessions, you can still get the full value because you will be able to get the recordings right away and the transcripts and still participate in the community. So I encourage you to go over to divineflowcourse.com and make your decision today. And if you do so, you get the Stop and Not Mine postcard set. Sadhvi Ji, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your teachings. Thank you for your life that you have dedicated to this work, and for having the courage to step into the sacred waters and free yourself of old stories, and for each step that you have taken since that time, to courageously follow divine intelligence. Thank you for cultivating this wisdom and these teachings, and for sharing them. Thank you so much. It is an honor to have you here at the Shift Network. Before we go, is there anything you would like to share with people who may be considering if they want to take this course?
Just so much love to everyone. And I am so excited to share this course because I have been gifted really by grace with such an experience of freedom and healing and transformation, that to be able to share the tools and the techniques that I've learned over these decades to get into that state and to hold it and to keep coming back to it and to remember it and to embody it is such a blessing, because people are suffering today, and we're suffering from so many things. But one thing that all of our sufferings have in common is that it has to do with the way that our minds think. And if we can shift how the mind thinks, we actually experience freedom. And I just want to mention lastly, it's really important that nobody thinks that freedom or these practices or process is in any way pulling you out of real life or your family or your work or the world that we live in that needs us all to be deeply engaged and present with it and active with it. But it's actually teachings that enable us to be even more present because we're present to the flow of the universe, and we're able then to actually manifest what the universe wants from us in our families, in our careers, in our workplaces, and as instruments of light, of love, of healing in our world. So it's not freedom because we push things away or ignore them or turn our backs on them, but it's freedom because we learn to see and acknowledge, but not identify with the stories and the pain and the limitations.
Oh, this is so needed. Such a powerful course and so needed today. Thank you, Sadhvi. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your teachings. And thank you to all who have joined us today. It is truly an honor to get to have you here with us. And we hope you'll join us for this course. It is going to be a beautiful, powerful course. Thank you all. Be well.
Oh, and thank you, Josh. And thank you so much to the whole Shift Network for this beautiful and sacred opportunity to share the miracles and the magic that I've been given with everyone.
Thank you so much, Sadhvi ji. Be well, everyone.